Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Talbott here for you again. We're going to keep going with our Silk Roads explanation, kind of a little bit of review and a little bit of new information. So the Silk Road, we've kind of hit around. It's a trade network, and it's going to across all of Eurasia, and it'll connect to Africa through some other trade networks we'll see later with the Trans-Saharan trade route. We're focusing kind of on Eurasia here, so it goes all the way into Eastern Europe and into the Byzantine and Roman empires, and it goes all the way across to China, and from there there's other connections as well. Now, it's not one person's going to travel the whole trade route with their stuff. It's kind of being in little relay stops along the way. So you'll carry it kind of to one city and then back, and then one city back, and then somebody else takes it further on. So it's called the Silk Road because silk is probably the most famous trade good that is shipped along this way. Very desirable all over the world at this time, at least in Afro-Eurasia. And so originally silk is all produced exclusively in China. By about 1200, there's other places, Japan, Korea, are also making silk, but China's still making lots of it, so they're involved in it. So you can find this silk from Asia all over Afro-Eurasia. You're going to see African kings are going to have it in their palaces. It's going to be in European churches. It's going to be in Buddhist monasteries near India. So all over the place. Now, the fact that it's silk ought to highlight the kind of people that are benefiting from this trade. These are luxury goods people are eating. Even spices we would consider luxury goods. The average person couldn't really afford this. So this is for your elite. Now, that doesn't mean normal people aren't going to benefit from it. You're certainly going to see some increase in wealth. But a lot of times, the governments are taxing their people so much or demanding so much silk or other goods to provide to the trade network that your everyday labor is not really going to benefit too much from this increase in trade. This increased wealth also helps the states become bigger and bigger, more and more powerful bureaucracies. That on one hand makes the trade better, but again, it's a bigger and bigger tax burden that these laborers are having to meet. And like we kind of mentioned, it's not a single trade route, it's kind of just a network. So there's more and more routes and stuff. The Mongols, when they come to power, are actually going to kind of wipe a couple cities out to make sure to try and streamline the Silk Road a little bit, but it never really just becomes one single road. What would develop along them were called caravanserais, and these were kind of like little pit stops along the Silk Road or different networks where you could exchange your camels or other beasts that you were using to carry these goods. And so these bigger and bigger cities kind of developed solely to support the flow of goods along the Silk Road. And it's kind of a picture of what one of them would be. So kind of an inn you could stay at, get food, get resupplied, kind of like, if you've ever played the Oregon Trail, this would be kind of the Asian version of those forts and stuff along the way. So kind of want to spend a little time focusing on some innovations in commerce that help the Silk Road get going more and more, and also were needed to make it effective. So the first one's kind of paper currency. So paper currency is invented in China. Now, China had some of the first money in the world. And look at what's up in the top right here. So you would have kind of these metal coins, and there would be a hole that strings could go through. And if you're making large transactions, you would kind of just do it by the amount of strings of money you had. Well, as you might imagine, carrying around a bunch of coins, if you're a common everyday person, not a big deal because you don't have a ton of money. But if you're someone that's involved in this big level trading lots and lots of stuff, these bigger level merchants, you're wasting a lot of your shipping capabilities just carrying the money with you. So they're going to develop paper currency around about 900 during the Tang Dynasty in China. And pretty much the paper money had pictures of the coins on it, and it signified how many coins it was kind of worth. And this is a crazy idea. Marco Polo, it blows his mind that people believe it, but the Chinese bureaucracy was so strong that people did trust it. So this kind of leads to a system of credit where people trusted they would get their money later on without having the actual physical coins and stuff with them. So we call that credit. Or you could get something big without paying for it all at once and just kind of keep making payments, like we see kind of with loans today. Some other innovations are going to be kind of bills of exchange. This is basically going to say, I have this bill of exchange that says this is good for this amount of stuff. And again, it was better than carrying lots of money because that bill of exchange is going to be less susceptible to being stolen by a raider or that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a modern check. You need a merchants that are going to trust the system, and you need bankers that are going to be having government support to make these things happen. So we'd see these banking houses take place. And they were kind of scrambled along with the kind of the caravanserais and other big trading centers. And you would basically take your bill of exchange in, you would go to the bank house, and you would get whatever you wanted. That the bill of exchange was good for, and that really reduced the risk of a lot of this trading. So people trade more and more. So this paper money, it would become known as flying money, became a big way to boost trade. And again, so you would be able to exchange that paper money on all across the Silk Road. And again, usually you're not traveling the whole route yourself. You're traveling just to your nearby caravanserai or the nearby bill of exchange. So that's kind of what helped facilitate this a little bit more. Some other things that changed because of the Silk Roads is religion. So we saw with Dar al-Islam how those trading and those merchants, including Muhammad, helped spread the religion. Same thing kind of happens with Buddhism. So Buddhism starts kind of in northeastern India, and it'll kind of spread along these different areas. And India is pretty prosperous. It's kind of going through its golden age at this time. So people wanted a connection to India. So that really boosted some of the people that wanted to convert to Buddhism. Now, these Buddhist centers become more and more wealthy, which kind of the early teachings of Buddhism were kind of not into the whole wealth. You want to give up your desires to limit suffering so you can get to nirvana. Well, so Buddhism, like all the other major religions, is going to have a split, and you're going to see the Mahayana kind of tradition of Buddhism is going to be more successful. So this one was pretty much, if you were going to be Buddhist, you kind of wanted to be a monk or a nun, and that obviously doesn't have a ton of mass appeal, whereas these others can say kind of everyday people can teach others to get to enlightenment so they can reach nirvana. The next big change is going to be a thing that travels along the Silk Roads, beyond the commerce, beyond ideas, is disease. So with this increase in manufacturing and trading centers, cities are going to get bigger and bigger. There's more economic opportunity in cities. So people move there. Well, you got more people living together without modern plumbing, and it's gross, and there's animals, and it's just a really kind of filthy place to live. So these are great spots for diseases like the bubonic plague to spring up. And this happens in Asia, it happens in India, and it definitely happens in Europe. Probably the most famous case of this disease is the Black Death, which we think kind of started in Central Asia with the Mongols, who kind of spread it as they were conquering. And by the time the Black Death gets to Europe, people in Europe had never experienced this disease. There is some natural immunity to it, but those that didn't have a natural immunity are going to get sick, and about half the European population is going to die. Now, the survivors, first off, they've got an immunity to this disease, so that's going to be good. They'll be less susceptible to it in the future. It also gives more economic opportunity to these middle class. This kind of is going to help spark the Renaissance we talked about in topic 1.6. And also, the diseases kind of hit wealthy people and poor people in similar amounts. So it's going to kind of help lessen some of the power of the elite landowners as these people are moving to cities and they're demanding higher and higher wages. And so we're going to kind of see some of the more economic opportunity. It's also going to see kind of some people are going to be more close to the Catholic Church, thinking, this is kind of the rapture they're dealing with. Some people are going to be turning away from the church because they're not sure that the church is helping. So as we kind of finish up the Silk Road here, kind of big things to remember, and it's always about keeping those big ideas in mind with AP World History. This is Eurasian trade, beginning of globalization. The Silk Road, these trading networks are connecting, what's going on in Central Asia, India and South Asia, East Asia, all the way over to what's going on in Europe. These more connected civilizations are going to have a spread of ideas. They are going to have a spread of religion. And we're also going to see disease is going to spread along with it. We're finally going to see those innovations in commerce, the paper currency, bills of exchange, banking houses. All those are going to be critical things that are going to carry over as we kind of see the modern world that we know today being formed. So kind of summarize your notes, and then we'll be ready for our next video. Have a great day, everyone.